everybody, my name is Elisa. Welcome or welcome back. If you have never been here before, I create my dream wardrobe from scratch and I enable you to do the same because I sell my original sewing patterns on Etsy, which is why we are here today. We are launching a brand new sewing pattern, which I'm so excited for. If you've been around here, you have very likely seen her because it is this beauty, which I have been obsessed with ever since I finished it. And I'm so glad to say that it seems that you guys have been as well because it was extremely popular and a lot of people have been asking me when I finally dropped the pattern. Today is the day, people. I am so stoked. Since I have first made this dress, which was about, I want to say 3 weeks ago, so this was quite a quick turnaround, I have tested the dress with 14 plus sewists. I have taken their feedback on board, I have tweaked the pattern, and we're finally ready to release it into the world. I have decided to name the dress Olympia, which is very fitting because we are in the middle of the challenges craze, and if you were to make the dress in the short version, as in here, then you would likely end up with something that looks a lot like a tennis dress, which was not intended, but perfect for marketing, you know. It's not the only reason why this dress is named Olympia. She is part of my O series of sewing patterns, which all feature this elevated double S shape under the bust, which I have featured before in my Ophelia dress, which was my very first ever sewing pattern, then the Odette dress, as well as the Oakley blouse. So she's now becoming the fourth sister in my O series. The dress comes in two versions. You could either opt for the mini version that we have seen before, or you could go midi, which is what we're gonna do today. You don't actually need many additions for this dress. It's also completely dartless. All you need is 250 to 300 centimeters of fabric, depending on the length that you go for, as well as a matching thread and a quite long invisible zipper. You wanna go for probably 55 to 65 centimeters, depending on your height. I have already cut all of my pieces yesterday. There is a pattern piece legend and cutting instructions included in the pattern, so go check that one out. As always, there is a mini tutorial on how to add seam allowance included in the PDF. There is a QR code that you just have to scan and you will find a 1 minute 30 or so video that explains how to add your seam allowance to your sewing pattern. Once you've done all of those things, we can get started. Let's jump into the step-by-step tutorial right now. So we are gonna start with our front bodice. The front bodice has two pieces, the upper and the lower piece, which go together like this. You will also find that there are notches in your pattern pieces, which is always a good idea to place them in your fabric, as well as some center front notches so you know where that is. So the first thing we're doing is just removing the paper pattern, and I'm then opening up my pieces, making sure the right side is facing up. What we need to do is we need to gather down the underbust of our upper bodice piece to the underbust of the lower bodice piece. And the way to do this is to simply place the two right sides touching and pin them along the underbust seam. Now you will find that there is a notch both in the upper as well as in the lower bodice which matches each other. So that's where you want to place another pin. You then have a notch in your lower bodice which does not exist in the upper bodice, and that is on purpose. For us to find the ease that is placed in the upper bodice, which eventually holds your bust, we are going to align the sides first. We're then going to just pin the two upper and lower bodice together flat along this underbust seam. And once we reach that second notch that is placed in the lower bodice, we can now see the ease that we need to gather down. The way I like to gather it down is by simply pleating it up and pinning it. And to make sure you have the same amount of pleats on both sides of your bust, you just count them. So I have 1 pleat, 2 pleats, 3 pleats, 4, 5, 6, and 7. I now move on to the other side and repeat the same steps. 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, and 7. Once the pleats are placed, you can go ahead and sew this underbust seam. And because I like to be a little extra, I sew one side first, so all of my pleats look one way, and then I reverse my piece and sew from the other side, so the pleats on the other side face the same direction. I'm now going to serge the seam and press it downwards. So this is what the front of our dress looks like so far. Now to complete the front of the dress, we need to insert our skirt pieces into these predefined godet sections. Now we have this funny little extension right here in the center front of our front bodice two-piece. These V shapes here is exactly where our skirt panels are going to go in. So what we need to do is we need to gather down our skirt panel to the predefined width of the waist seam right here. And to do that, we are going to add 2 rows of basting stitches right here to this curve. You simply set your machine to the highest stitch length available, and so 2 rows of stitches without closing the beginning or the end. So now to actually insert the godet, it is worth noting that there's a little bit of prep work you have to do. In your pattern, there is a little line that is in a 45-degree angle to this predefined godet section, and you want to snip this. This is ideally the exact distance of your seam allowance, which should be 1 to 1.5 centimeters. We're going to start by placing the long side of the skirt, so that's the vertical line of the skirt, right sides touching. So front bodice 2, the lower front bodice and the skirt panel are going to go right sides touching right here. And what we want to make sure is that up here, the end of our seam allowance and the end of this snip that we've placed matches up. So it would look something like this. I'm now going to sew all the way from my hem up to this incision that I made, making sure my seam ends pretty much exactly where the incision ends. Once that long side of the skirt is sewn in, we can go ahead and gather down the waist of the skirt panel to the waist of our lower bodice piece. So I'm just grabbing the 2 upper or lower threads of my basting stitches, that doesn't matter which ones, and then I'm going to just push and pull to gather the skirt panel, constantly referencing the actual width of my waist seam. Once I feel like I've gathered it down to the right width, I'm going to place a securing pin, and I'm also going to tie up the ends of my basting stitch just so nothing comes undone. I'm now making sure that my gather is nicely spread across the waist seam, and then I pin it down. Right, now I'm going to take this to my sewing machine and sew down this seam, and I'm going to do it from the side where I can see the previous seam that I've placed, and I'm going to make sure they're not overlapping, as I want to ensure I have a really nice tip in this section right here. So I start exactly where my previous seam ended. So, and ideally we should now have a really nice and clean insert right here. When I turn it around, you can see that there is no hole and there is no bulging in any way. This basting stitch that's still visible here, we can remove. I'm now going to repeat the same steps on the other side. Right, so the last thing that we need to do to prepare the front of the dress is add our front pockets. So we have this pocket piece here, which ideally you've cut twice, so you have 4 layers of the same piece, which results in 2 pockets. I'm grabbing 2 of my 4 layers and I'm placing them onto my skirt like so. I want to make sure that I place it about 1 centimeter below my waist seam, and this is where I'm going to start pinning. So I'm placing it on one side, and I'm also placing it the same way on the other side. I'm now going to sew both of these pockets down. Now that the pockets are attached, I'm going to serge the entirety of my side seam with the pockets folded towards the center front. So now that I have serged the entirety of the side, I can fold the pocket towards the outside like this and understitch the seam allowance. So I'm just top stitching the pocket from this side with a minimal distance from my original seam of about 0.5 centimeter. With everything said and done, this is what our front dress looks like right now. All the pieces are sewn together and the pockets are attached. We now basically have to repeat all of the same steps with the back. We do have a underbust seam which continues on the back side, and we also need to gather down the back skirt to fit the waist seam of the back bodice two-piece, which is the lower back bodice piece. As before, we start out by sewing the upper and lower bodice pieces together. Once the two back sides are sewn together, we need to move on to the skirt. And again, the skirt panel waist seam is quite a bit wider than the waist seam of our bodice piece, so we need to ruffle that down. Right, so now I have my two back sides completely assembled, and we are now going to attach the pockets the exact same way as we've done in the front. So just 1 centimeter below our waist seam is where we're going to start to pin it towards the side of the skirt. I'm now going to sew this down, serge the entirety of the side of the dress, then I'm going to fold it outwards, understitch the seam allowance. Same steps as with the front. Now that the front and back are done individually, we can place them right sides touching to join them. What we want to do is we want to pin together the shoulders, followed by the side seams, around our pockets, and then down the rest of the skirt. So for starters, I'm just placing a couple of pins at the shoulder, and then I'm going to go into my side. There's a few things that are more important than others, so what you want to make sure is that the underbust seam from the front to the back is one continuous seam. So we want to place a needle right there to get started, and then we just place a needle above. We then go down to our waist seam and align that with each other. Again, very important that the waist seam continues in one line from the front to the back. That just gives us a professional look. And then I'm pinning the curved side in between. We are then going to place our pockets on top of each other. Now that I have pinned the entirety of my sides, I can start right here in the armpit section, sew down to my waist seam, around my pocket, and lock the seam right here. You then want to lift your needle and start approximately 4 centimeters above the end of your pocket right here, and that is just so that you close the pocket entrance a little bit more, so that when you place things inside your pocket, they're not necessarily falling out. You could go wider, you could go less, so maybe I'm even going to do 6 centimeters instead. So I stop sewing here, lift my needle, set it back down here, and then sew all the way down my side of my skirt. All right, so a little bit of vertical action for you so you can see the whole of the dress. And this is as it fits right out of the box. I am quite chuffed with it. I'm very happy about it, but I do want to give you a few pointers about the general fit of the dress. So first of all, we do have the under bust seam, which should sit right under the bust as the name suggests. You also do want to make sure that the ruffled pleats that we placed here are right under your bust apex. The torso of the dress is kind of the pièce de résistance. We do have a dropped waist right here. You probably want the V-shaped waistline to sit right where your hip bones are. So right here is where my hip bones sit, and this is where the ruffles are placed. The boat neckline is quite good for me right out of the box. You can see that the sides and the neckline is still unfinished. We have to keep in mind that we add facing to this later, so it's going to take both the armholes as well as the neckline in by about 1 centimeter around the perimeter. However, I do feel like I want to lower my neckline by about 1 centimeter, and then in total it's going to be 2 centimeters lower than where it sits right now. I think that's just going to look a little bit better for me. It's a little bit high at the moment. Do keep in mind that that also affects your facing. So if you pre-cut your facing and you then want to make changes about the neckline, you might have to recut your facing. The back sits really well. I haven't actually put my zipper in yet, so it looks a little bit puckering, but I do know when I put the zipper in, it's all going to be nice and flat. The specialty about this back is that it does actually have some shape to it. It's not just straight. So do keep that in mind when you place your zipper, but we're going to do that together later anyway. And that is it. I'm really pleased about the dress. It has something very 1950s reminiscent about it when it's long like this, and I quite love that. It also makes me stand up really nice and straight like a little ballerina, because if I just slouch like I normally would, we do have creases here, which we don't want. So it's actually good for our posture as well. So let's move on. I'm now going to go ahead, lower my neckline, then cut my facing pieces, and I will show you how to place the facing. So I'm going to finish up the dress by first placing my center back zipper in. This is an invisible zipper that's 60 centimeters long. And I'm going to start out by placing it right sides touching with one side of my center back. I'm going to make sure I'm just 1 centimeter shy of the end of my center back up here. So now that the first side is pinned down, I'm gonna baste it in. Once the first side is basted in, I'm going to fold it over and I'm gonna place a few markers with my tailor's chalk on my zipper where my seams sit, so I can align these with the seams on the other side so everything is perfectly matched up. I'm gonna baste in the second side now. So the zipper is basted in, and now we can see if all of our seams match up. And unsurprisingly, they do. Now that we are at this stage, it's always a good idea to try the dress one more time just to make sure everything sits nicely, isn't too snug, isn't too loose, because at this point you can still make a few changes, maybe taking the back in a little bit if you feel like it's too loose, or letting it out a little bit if you feel like it's too snug. If you're happy with everything, you can go ahead and properly sew in the zipper by giving it another stitch as closely to the zipper teeth as possible with your invisible zipper foot. If you do not have an invisible zipper foot, your normal foot will do as well. You just have to uncurl the zipper teeth and sew in the ditch that reveals itself. So my zipper is now sewn in. I'm very pleased about it. And now I can actually close the rest of my center back skirt by just folding it right sides touching. Pinning it down. And now I'm going to sew the center back shut. So the zipper is in. I just tried the dress one more time to make sure everything's perfect, and it is a really nice fit. I'm really happy about it. Now, in a second, I'm going to show you how to trace the facing for the dress. However, first I need to lower my neckline a little bit. Now, this is my center front, and I placed the pin right where I want my neckline to eventually end. So I will have to consider that I need some seam allowance there as well. I have pinned just shy of 3 centimeters away, which means that I want to remove 2 centimeters in total. And the way to do this is to fold your neckline on top of each other like this, so both my layers are on top. And when I cut this now, I will have a symmetrical result. So this is 2 centimeters, which means 1 centimeter is my seam allowance and 1 centimeter is the actual pattern piece. Now, to create the facing, I'm gonna snatch my pattern piece and I'm going to remove 1 centimeter from it to mimic what I've just done to my actual dress. And then I take what I've just cut away to mimic the curve. Here we are. So this is the pattern piece as I need it. And I also need these pattern pieces right here. And for demonstration purposes, I'm gonna cut these up now so you know exactly what the parts are that you need for your facing. I'm going to go for facing that is 6 centimeters deep. So I'm measuring that right here in the center front. I'm also measuring that here in my side seam. And I'm also going to go down from my shoulder by about 6 and in from my arm curve, just so I know whereabouts I have to move around. So I'm now going to mark a continuous line, and then also here along my back. And along the center back, we are going to reduce it down to about 4 because it doesn't need to be quite that wide. And then because the zipper obviously continues and we still want to have a nice finish as it goes down, I apply again the same principle, just creating that 4 centimeter tracing. We then need to go a little bit further down, as we know our zipper is about 60 centimeters long. So this section from the neckline down needs to be 60 as well. So I'm just snatching myself a little paper and I'm gonna make sure I end up at about 65. So really what you want to create is simply one nice, continuous, equidistant piece from your exposed area. So that would be the center back, because this opens and closes with your zipper. Then you also want to be able to overturn your neckline up here, your armholes, and your neckline in front. So these are the pieces you need. This is how I like to cut my lining pieces, and this is how you can create facing for your dress. So let me cut this from my dress fabric, then we're going to attach it, do the hem, and then we're done. So I have cut my facing and I have also sewn together the side seams. So this is where we're at right now. So these are my side seams, this is my center front, and these are my open shoulders. We leave these open. I have also opened up the shoulders of the main dress. We had closed them previously so we could try on the dress and make sure that the fit is right. But now to apply the facing, we're gonna open the shoulders back up again because things are much easier that way. So I'm placing the dress right sides facing up on the table in front of me, and then I fetch my lining and I place it right sides facing down, and I start aligning everything at the center front notch. I'm just going to continue pinning the lining along my neckline. So you pin along your center front neckline, you continue to pin along your armholes, always making sure that the actual seams match up. So my side seams match up, my shoulder seams match up, and we're going to pin all the way towards our center back where our zipper starts, and we're gonna stop here for now. But you can see that the center back zipper now is also nicely prepared and ready to be sandwiched between the facing and the shell, but we do that later. We focus just on the neckline and our armholes for now. I am now going to sew all around my neckline and armholes, leaving the shoulder sections right here open. So this stays open and this stays open on both sides. I'm going to sew around here, lift my needle, set it back down, sew around here, lift my needle, set it back down, sew around here, and so on and so forth. Now that I have attached all of my facing, and before I continue sewing it down the center back to sandwich my zipper, I'm gonna go in and understitch the seam allowance in as many sections as I can. It's gonna be more easy probably around the armhole, and then just this front section of my front neckline. Maybe back here you can go up until before the curvature of the boat neck. Anywhere you can is good. That's just gonna help the facing stay on the inside of the dress rather than coming out. Right, now we can turn everything the right side out and give it a really good press. The facing is attached. Now let's close our shoulders back up again. And the way we do this is we're folding the front outside in. We pop the back into the front shoulder part like this. Then we reach into a lining from the inside and we grab both. So we pull them out like this. And now just neatly place them inside each other and sew across. And now when I pull, front and back are nicely sewn together. Just need a good press, but we have a beautifully overturned shoulder that has no raw seams anywhere. So doing that for the other side now as well. So now that all of the facing is sewn, understitched, pressed, the shoulders are closed, I'm gonna go ahead and serge the entirety of my raw edge along the side that is not eventually going to be sewn together with the zipper. So all of those curves that go around on the inside, I'm gonna serge all of that so nothing is fraying. So to complete the upstairs of our dress, before we move on to the hem, we want to sandwich our zipper in between the lining in the back like this. And the simple way to achieve this is to separate your facing from your shell, fold it over so that the right sides are touching. I'm also going to cut back the end of my zipper here because that's going to be in the way later. We don't need that anymore. So I'm folding it over and I'm pinning this long piece all the way down along my center back where my zipper is, to sandwich the zipper in between the lining and the shell. Now that this is pinned down, I'm gonna sew all of it about 1 centimeter from my edge, and this is going to sandwich the zipper in between the facing and the shell. And this is what all of this looks like completed.
Your eyes tell me that you don't wanna leave just yet. No, my eyes agree. It's almost like when we first met. Oh, I don't care, it's getting too late. I want you and I can't wait. Don't wanna spend a minute without you. I know you feel the same. So come on, give me love. I'ma show you how to move with my body. Come hit me with your touch and make me wanna say, damn. And yeah, you know what's up. Ain't nothing I won't do for your body. So give me all you got right now. I know I'm yours, baby. So come give me love. You know you're mine, baby. So come give me love. I never felt nothing quite like this. I get a high every time we kiss. Can't get enough, baby. So come give me love. I know I'm yours, baby. So come give me love. You know you're mine, baby. So come give me love. I never felt nothing quite like this. I get a high every time we kiss. Can't get enough, baby. So come give me love. All of your love. Won't you love me till the morning? Love me in the evening. You know what I want. Won't you hold me like I'm yours? Show me that I'm yours. You know just what I want. Won't you love me like the last time? Like our time was right now. Show me what it's about. Love me till the morning. Love me in the evening. You know what I want. I know I'm yours, baby. So come give me love. You know you're mine, baby. So come give me love. I never felt nothing quite like this. I get a high every time we kiss. Can't get enough, babe. So come give me love. All of your love.
And that's it, my friends. That's the Olympia dress. I hope you like her as much as I do. You know, she's available in a mini and a midi length, and there was a little surprise at the end because I made 2 versions. I really love the yellow and white houndstooth version that I wore outside, but the gingham one is also just an instant classic, I think. The sewing pattern for this dress is now officially available through my Etsy shop. I would love it if you gave her a go. If you do, please don't forget to show me your result. I would love to see your make. You can tag me on Instagram via @FrillsandStitches. As always, if you have any questions whatsoever about the construction of the dress, don't hesitate to reach out to me. And one final thought, now that I have seen the final reveal shots of the midi length version of this dress, it really does remind me of the wedding dress that is featured in the 1950s Audrey Hepburn classic Funny Face. Is it just me? I don't think so. This kind of really looks like that dress. The bell shape of the skirt and the boat neck. I mean, that's cool. Was not intended, but it's cool. So you can choose tennis dress or wedding dress, up to you. And with that, we're at the end of today's video. Thank you so much for letting me be a part of your day, and I see you next time. Bye bye.
Hold me like I'm yours. Show me that I'm yours. You know just what I